Hey, this is Andrew,
And this is Joey.
and we had the pleasure of interviewing and speaking to Major Scott Huesing, retired Marine Corps commanding officer of Echo 24, author of the book Echo and Ramadi about Echo 24's deployment in 2006 2007 to Ramadi, Iraq, which is I believe at the time was the most dangerous city in the world.
Yep, yep, absolutely. Um, yeah, I don't know what to say. It was an amazing opportunity to speak to somebody who is very well renowned, and just like everybody else we've had on the show, we have things in common, and that's people forget that these famous folk are only human, and so that was a real big, exciting thing for me is speaking to somebody so well renowned. It was awesome.
So if you check out the link in the description down below, we will link the website to his book, which I believe is echoandramadi.com, and then to a nonprofit that he works with called Save the Brave, which
SaveTheBrave.org.
so they do a lot of things for veterans to help curb the suicide epidemic that is going around facing our veterans.
Just fucking call your bro.
Yeah, call your brother. Don't
Just fucking call your brother. It's seriously, it's
remember,
makes your life way better.
suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Yep.
We together we will be able. We can get through it. We can fix what's going on. You're never too far gone. We
No.
love you. Your brothers love you. Your fucking sisters love you. Your family
Yeah.
loves you. If you don't have family, think again, because all the dudes that you fucking served with, all the dudes that you fought with, that oath doesn't end. We fucking have your back. I could
No.
hate, even if I hate the shit out of you, I will still fucking call you and sit with you
Hmm.
because I don't want the pain to be spread.
Yep. And
So
it's
stop
it
offing
seems
yourself.
yeah, and it seems ridiculous to I mean that we've been out for me and Andrew have been out for 10 years, and we've had a whole life, and even Mr. Husing says that he's had a whole life past the Marine Corps, but it's still, talking to he still talks to his brothers. He still talks to some of the guys he originally served with, and me and Andrew starting this, me personally talking at how we connected. We haven't spoken 10 years. We talk to each other. We're in the same spot in our lives. It's crazy, but now dude, I'm telling you, just call your buddy. Just fucking call your buddy, dude.
Also, like, comment, subscribe, share our stuff. We're trying to get the word out there. We're trying to get some bigger guests like Mr. Husing. Uh, and thank you for your support and check his stuff out. It's definitely you're if you support him, you're definitely supporting the right people.
Yep. And if you think Old Yeller made you cry, well,
So
yeah.
here's the interview. Hope you like it. Okay, here we are. So today, Joey and I are joined by Scott Huesing, retired Major, United States Marine Corps, commanding officer of Echo 24 during Ramadi, and author of the book Echo and Ramadi. So I want to thank you for joining us, Scott. And it's a big honor.
It is a huge honor, Scott. We are the late OIF Marines. Okay, so we're the books and everything have traveled through the Marine Corps, and to us, you're kind of a legend. Not to be all nerdy, but I really thank you for being here today.
No, it's great to be on All Clear, brother. And I tell you, it doesn't matter what you did in the military, what branch you served in, when you served, whether you turned a wrench on the truck or were kicking doors in Ramadi or flying an airplane. Everybody's service counts to me, and it should to everybody in the public because the brave men and women, they just make up such a small percentage of what I like to call the finest segment of Americans. And you guys are part of that and should be justifiably proud. I know I am. I'm proud of you guys. And doing this show, doing All Clear, it's a great medium as you guys are learning, as you're early in on this journey. The opportunity to meet and connect with people and really just share not only the military stories of life, but the lives of those people that supported the military, our fight, and just being able to share that, I think is something not everybody gets the opportunity to do. So I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
Yeah. Yes, it's definitely starting this. I noticed that you two, in some of your podcasts, you say that you still talk to your original homies from your original platoon as a enlisted, that you just in a 2018 that you just got off the phone with them, and we had lost contact and we reestablished contact, and it's just done my mental health just amazing. It's keeping in touch with your old friends. So the podcast world is pretty awesome. We like to start with the famous freaking question that everybody wants to know. Why did you join?
I think you might have joined prior to the dragon commercial, the famous fighting the dragon. I think you mentioned it in the book. I think you mentioned about fighting the dragon.
I'm pre-dragon.
But yeah, you are a Mustang. You were prior enlisted. What made you want to, one, join, and then two, cross over to the dark side?
Well, I don't know if you guys were following on social media on Instagram at Echo and Ramadi, but I was chronicling this journey of me and at Save the Brave org on Instagram, my journey across the country and back to honor one of my fallen brothers and guy I went to high school with, and it was actually his older brother that, just like most young guys, get kind of suckered into the military, not knowing a whole lot about it, what it's all about. And I can still remember going to the phone hanging on the wall. Yeah, we used to put phones on walls and they had buttons you push. And I could tell you the number right now, 662-3427 was my number. It's probably the only one I have memorized. And Andy's on the other line and he says, "Hey, guess what I did? I joined the Marines." He goes, "You got to come down here and meet these guys." I know jack shit about the Marine Corps, but the uniforms were cool. The office was, with the posters and the cami netting, and these guys could sell. I led a pretty high risk life, fighting and drinking underage and riding my motorcycle and getting chased by the cops and getting caught by the cops. And, I just saw these Marines as the biggest group of risk takers I'd ever met. And I enlisted, and, I did my 4 years, Desert Shield, Desert Storm. Figured the error of my ways, being a poor, extremely poor high school student. This isn't a new true confession, but I'll find one throughout the show. Graduated with a 1.24 GPA, so barely got out of high school. Did vastly better in college at Illinois State, and then still had the desire to serve. And that journey and those wins and losses are what propelled me some 15 years later to find myself very privileged to command Echo Company, 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, and lead those warriors in what was literally the deadliest city in Iraq at the time.
Hoorah.
So was Echo, was that your first combat deployment, or had you been in in the, was that about 3 years? The war was about what, three and a half years old by the time you guys got over there?
No, not my first rodeo. Obviously, not a whole lot of intense action in Desert Shield, Desert Storm, but I was in Baghdad in 2004 with the anti-terrorism unit, and then quick turn through school and back as a commander with Echo 24, and then a couple more deployments after that. I think I retired 24 years with some 10 deployments under my belt, both combat and operational deployments around the world. So, but I wrote about that in Echo and Ramadi because it really was the pinnacle of my career after 24 years of being enlisted and as an officer. Just because it's like the Super Bowl of of being a grunt, of being a commander, and everything you want for and everything you fear, because there's nothing glamorous about it in the end. And that romance of being shot at and getting blown up and killing and fighting an enemy you can't see, there's nothing romantic about that in the end. But it really is everything we do as soldiers to prepare for our job. And I mean, there's guys that go 20 plus years in their career and they never get to put that training to test. And these young men and women at times that served in Ramadi were tested daily, sometimes 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times a day in direct contact with the enemy. And I could have never been prouder of the way these guys performed under those circumstances, because it was such a test for them physically, emotionally, the strain, that friction that I write about in the book puts on you, that feeling of the unknown and what that does to someone. And I was, again, tested in combat before. I was a 35-year-old captain. Most guys like you, as when they join, they're 18, 19 years old on average. I mean, they were playing high school football not a year before, and now they're thrust into this, unforgiving bastion of combat. And they really took care of each other and me better than anything I've ever experienced.
So the I guess was your senior guys in Echo had been in Ramadi prior to your 06 deployment. Was their previous deployment, your senior guys?
That was maybe their first or second deployment with the battalion. And again, when you think about this battle-hardened sergeant who's a combat leader, in retrospect, he's a 22-year-old kid, and he's got one deployment and one tour under his belt as a Marine. And the level of responsibility that is thrust on those sergeants and lieutenants and these kids, they're really, there's no other way to put it, but they're the men almost instantaneously once they graduate from boot camp and receive all this phenomenal training. They're expected to do these things, these superhuman acts that most people really will never understand, that type of pressure and responsibility when you hold the lives of, whether it's 12 or 45 men under your command, or in my case at that time, over 250 Marines, soldiers, and sailors. But these young guys just were, they never ceased to impress me, man. I tell you, it's amazing. But I didn't see the 22-year-old young man. I just saw sergeant, and I expected them to perform at this level. And in hindsight, that's a tough thing to balance. And I love sharing that perspective, because sometimes you don't have that perspective in the moment because you're focused on so many other things. And now I look back and understand that, man, I probably could have been a better leader had I understood how people process things at such a young age. And I'm sure, being a Mustang, people often ask me, did that make you a better leader being enlisted? And I always say no, it didn't make me a better leader. I think leaders lead under any circumstances. And there's absolutely no such thing as combat leadership, just leadership. But it did give me a very unique perspective and appreciation for how much to value their time. And I never wanted it to be wasted. And that was important.
Coming from the 18, 19-year-old mindset, I turned 18 in boot camp. I turned 19 in Iraq. And there was, it did, you did sometimes get the feeling of, man, this guy doesn't know what we're going through, about, your brand new second lieutenant, that just hit the fleet, and it's like, man, this guy doesn't know what it's like to be a PFC in the Marine Corps infantry. He doesn't know what it's like to be a lance corporal, and because as we know, shit rolls downhill. So when you're an E1 through 4, generally you're catching the shitty stuff.
Yeah.
But I completely get where you're coming from about being a better leader. You're either a good leader or you're not. It's not like, oh, we're gonna give him the benefit of the doubt because he used to have black instead of shiny on his collar. But I think from at least my perspective, reading the book was, man, this guy kind of gets where his younger guys are coming from. He's laced those boots up. He's walked kind of in those shoes.
Well, Andy, in defense of lieutenants, and I wrote, I don't know how many chapters are in the book. I can't remember, like 30 or something, but there's one dedicated to the lieutenants. And I was always a huge fan of lieutenants, not just because I was one, but it really is one of the toughest ranks in the Marine Corps. If you're a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps, just euphemistically, like, you're saluting everybody, both up and down the chain of command. Like, that's the fulcrum point of, like, wearing your elbow out. Like, that poor fucker is saluting everybody. But he's also a 22-year-old kid himself who's gotten a year of phenomenal training, a whole year before the Marine Corps trusts that kid to stand in front of troops and lead them. And that's an immense responsibility. And I know as enlisted guys, we make a lot of lieutenant jokes, but the best part of that is the staff NCOs, those middle management guys that train the lieutenants. And if you're lucky enough to be surrounded and by good NCOs and staff non-commissioned officers, I make no mistakes about it. Anything I ever learned about being an officer was taught to me by enlisted. That's how the system works. And really teaching guys to understand that, even at the lowest level, I think that's really what builds a great team. When you're a really great, jiving, cohesive unit, especially when you're an infantry unit and your mission is to close with and destroy the enemy. That's something that doesn't get shared a lot too, because as Marines, we have we've got a lot of jokes, we got a lot of hubris too. And it's one of the things that sustains us. But those guys have a really tough job. And again, they really took care of their Marines phenomenally. So it's an interesting perspective. And I hope that at least some of the military listeners that hear your show understand that is maybe gives them a little appreciation for that, if nothing else.
And we had our platoon commander come on our podcast, and it was like just huge for me, because talking to him, like, I don't guess we ever got the chance to talk man to man, like as humans. I always looked at him as some type of idol god, because I was a dork. Okay, talking to him and realizing that he's literally like the same as I am, it just puts a different perspective on life, and different perspective on how I go about voting for presidents and stuff. That not, you can't have one person fix all your problems. The leaders that we have are just freaking human people. That's we can't iterate that enough, in my opinion.
Agree. I think you tipped on something that at the time when you're in that unit, there are boundaries. I'll tell you a funny story, because stories are better. I did a panel discussion in South Carolina, and I invited one of my lieutenants, one of my Gold Star brothers, my interpreter, Iraqi interpreter, who's now an American citizen, and one of my squad leaders, and me, and it was Major General James Livingston, Medal of Honor recipient. Well, Brian McKibben was one of my squad leaders, and I said something during the discussion about not being his friend, and afterwards he comes up to me and goes, "Hey, sir, that kind of stung a little bit. Like, I always thought we were, but when you're in charge of so much. The Marines at that age, I don't care what age they are, I wasn't there to be their friend. I was there to lead and make sure that they were taken care of completely, because you got enough friends, but you only have one commander. And that's a responsibility that you have to bear at every level. And I understood that. It didn't make me some unapproachable icon in the eyes of the young Marine. I was still able to communicate effectively, but I knew what those boundaries were. And I'm so fortunate, as I'm sure you are, Joey, that as time passes and as you evolve and as you mature and you gain some wisdom and you leave the service, some of those boundaries can be broken down. And a case in point is Nick Velez and Brian. We're still friends, although I tease him. He's on active duty still. But Nick Velez is the president of SaveTheBrave.org. And he was one of my young saw gunners. And now we're partners in this nonprofit. And he's a successful entrepreneur, owns Bastard's American Canteen, and is just doing great things. And but I still can't beat the sir out of him. It's still ingrained in me. I think they like that. I think that it's one of those things that keeps us together. And I'm very, very honored to still have that connection to so many hundreds and hundreds of Marines that I was privileged to serve with and alongside. So that's probably the best story you just reminded me of that. So thanks.
Hey, and that's what I'm here for. Comedic relief and other things.
All right, so you're on the 15th MEU, and you get word that you're going to Ramadi. What was that like? What was the aura or the feeling on the ship when it was like, okay, we're on a MEU and we're going to combat? What is it like? Gentlemen, get your shit together. It's time to go.
Or was it happy birthday, Marines? It's the Marine Corps birthday. We're going to Ramadi.
That was the message from, at the time, Colonel Brian Boudreau, now General Boudreau, as we stood on the flight deck of the USS Boxer. That was the day they officially announced it. There was rumors going around that the CENTCOM commander and the president were willing to commit the theater reserve to Iraq, and that's what we were, as a 2,500 construct of the Marine Corps Navy team with the Marine Expeditionary Unit floating in the Persian Gulf. So they pulled the trigger on that. But I think the Marines, obviously, they wanted to go. They wanted to get in the fight. They wanted to test their mettle. So there was, as Lieutenant McLaughlin said, this giddy anticipation. They were all nervous. But again, as you mentioned, the veterans who had been to Ramadi before really eased that anxiety of the new guys. I think that those guys that served in Ramadi in 2004, and there were about 40 or 50 of them, we were so lucky to have them as part of the team, because they knew the landscape, they knew the environment, and they helped abate a lot of the fear and doubt in those young Marines before we cross that threshold. And what's interesting to note, especially when I was doing the research and talking to these guys for the book, how remarkable it was. Yeah, we fought in Ramadi in 2004 and it was bad, but it's even worse now. And that was interesting, because most people talk about the first battle of Ramadi in 04 and then the second battle of Ramadi in 06. And talking to so many people through so many different units that were in that city, I submit now that it was one battle. It was a 2-year fight for that city, with highs and lows on different time periods. But at the end of it, when the Army and the Marines kind of settled that city down in 2007, we really did make a difference. And I think it helped turn the tide of the war in Anbar province to a large degree. And that's not speculation. That's verified by the metrics of success we had in providing, not just killing a lot of bad guys that needed to be killed, but the stability in those cities, the security, the fact that normal people were able to go back to work, start rebuilding their lives, start rebuilding the city in some cases. So that was a real defining thing, and those veterans of Ramadi in '04, I think, really added to that success.
Well, you mentioned before, previously, like you compared the Iraqi and then the Vietnam, and you explained why America was more successful in the Iraq wars because we knew the culture and things like that. You know, it seems like Vietnam that it wasn't so much about that. I think we did that war. I mean, we were not on the kinetics. Like we had a little bit of nonsense, like a little bit of kinetic stuff, but really our mission was the aftermath and winning the hearts and minds. And honestly, I it was a very necessary. It was just a very necessary step. And people want to criticize the war and stuff like that, but you know, there was a lot of people that were more people than not were thankful for our presence in this area.
I think so too. And you can use the word success and winning. I think they have largely varying definitions for guys who served in Iraq or Afghanistan, because my personal thoughts in retrospect is, you know, at that time in '06, we were there to survive. I mean, we're really just fighting for our lives. There's never been a clear exit strategy at the outset of this war. We were still there. We're still in Afghanistan, and that place is never going to be a utopia in Afghanistan. It's just not. And in Iraq, we've really punted it through the grandstands of life, through multiple political and administrative failures, not establishing a permanent presence, not as occupiers, but I've written about this too in op-eds, not showing them what right looks like, because not American democracy, not French democracy, and how those systems work. And our industrial power in America is unwilling to take a loss on their bottom line and go over and establish commerce and trade. And, you know, where's Walmart? Where's McDonald's? Where's Home Depot going over saying, you know, we're going to go over and just give them a taste of how we operate in the private sector and create jobs and infrastructure and throughput and increase those sea lanes of communication and hopefully give these people a better life. They're not willing to do that. And that, to me, I think that really creates a divide between guys who serve their country and those who were in the military and the public. I mean, they'll never understand making that type of sacrifice. And when it comes down to it, we were willing to risk our lives. But these companies, and this is kind of esoteric, they're unwilling to risk dollars. They're unwilling to risk a 5 to 10 year loss in sales and revenue to help really make a difference in the world. And when we're talking about the world, in this case, we're focused on the Middle East, which is a large region. I mean, imagine that. If we could do that, if we say, hey, the military's out, tag corporate America, you're in. It's safe, it's secure. Go show them what right looks like. Policing agencies, prisons, all of these things, banking. There's still no ATMs in Iraq.
Yeah.
Most Americans couldn't fathom that if they didn't go to Circle K or 7-Eleven and be able to grab $200 out of the ATM. There's no ATMs in Iraq.
Well, they don't have very much to fight for. You know, like it seems like they're broken down. The people that we were there to defend. It's like we have something to fight for. We had back home. We had Starbucks. We had these cool things. This idea of America that we all had. That for me anyway, that kept me pushing through. And your brothers, you know, obviously your brothers is a huge part of it. But we have this vision of America. We could do so many different things, and it's something worth fighting for. And it seems like over there they don't got a lot to fight for. And so I agree with you. If we could take a loss and maybe, you know, stimulate them and, you know, with these cool things like Walmart, ATMs, internet,
I wouldn't
just all
even call it taking a loss. I would really rather than view it as creating an opportunity and making an investment in the future.
There we go. Yeah, and it would give
Lest we breed a safe haven for future terrorists who want to park airplanes in more buildings.
exactly.
Well, you know, in the sort of towards the end of the book, I think it's called "The Bank" or something. The chapter where you talk about you guys had took control of a bank and were basically using it as your firm base, and you know the government wanted it back in better shape than when you got it. It's like but why? You guys don't have any money. Like it's like you know what I mean, like. And I literally laughed out loud when you talk about walking up and seeing them getting ready to blow the wall out of the second floor, and you're like, "Hey, we're not going to do that shit." It's like, but it's like we gave all these promises. It's a building. Like how many. Or how much more secure would the AO have been had they been able to, create that fighting position or whatever, as opposed to having to keep this bank intact?
Well, I didn't put any pictures in the book for a lot of reasons. The primary one was if I wasn't a good enough writer to describe the scene and leave some imagination, I didn't want to do that. But I like thinking of that, Andy, that most people think of a bank and they go into a Wells Fargo and there's the tellers. This building was a piece of shit and it had a big iron vault in it. So it wasn't like, Wachovia or Chase. It was just this 2-3 story building with a big steel vault in it that they kept piles of cash in. It really wasn't anything most people would consider a bank. So there was nothing really to refurbish out of it. But I mean, I just tried to get the Marines out of the mentality of building stuff up instead of blowing stuff up, and that is really tough.
Yeah, especially when the CO's calling in rocket strikes. I remember hearing about. I had never heard of that weapon, that ordinance before. What is that? What was that called again? The
Gimlers.
Yeah.
Which is, it's HIMARS as well, the Marine Corps version, but it's a precision guided multiple launch rocket system that it was new. It had just come on the scene in 2006. A couple years earlier, I'd received some training in it, but how to use it, how to employ it, the effectiveness, the safety of employing those 40-pound warheads. Actually, I think it was about 100-pound unitary warhead on targets no less than half a city block away were kind of unknown, even for guys at the senior level. But we were lucky to get smart on them real quick.
So, what was it like for you guys that first, we'll say week or so in the city itself? I think was it ECP-8 where that first like big firefight took place?
It reminded me of I was reminded of a story when I rode back from the East Coast on my bike, and I stopped in Tucson, and one of my squad leaders, Ben Israel, reminded me of that first patrol, the first day or two we were in Ramadi, and we were all gung-ho. We wanted to get out and get our feet wet. And we did it during the day to go do a recapture mission on a school. There was some intelligence or something. And we went out and, man, we just got lit the fuck up. And we quickly realized that we got to take things a little bit slower and then operate at night so that was a real eye opener. And more so for Ben because he caught a round across the nose. I think Lehman caught a piece of shrapnel in the wrist as we got caught in a crossfire of a hasty ambush that the enemy saw us rolling through the streets. And lucky to have the Army reconnaissance teams up north. I mean, we put a hurting on them, as we egress back. But again, you really learn quickly, and apply those failures as a leader so you don't repeat those same mistakes. But yeah, there's an eagerness to do things, and combat changes so rapidly and it's so fluid, you have to really adjust your style. But I think those first few days set the tone of how bad it was going to be in the city and how much fighting we were going to have to do and how we'd have to adjust our tactics.
Was it, do you think they were trying to test you guys out, or because for somehow they like knew our like rotation schedule better than we did? You know, they knew when a brand new unit was there. They knew, I have no idea because you know all our shit looks the same. Like how we had a guy on here talking about like they knew when a gunner would change, when it was a different rear gunner, and the kids would even the kids noticed it.
Yeah.
So do you think that had anything to do with it, or was it always like that?
Just think about your neighborhood that you live in. Imagine when a house is sold and it goes on the market. You knew who lived there. You know how long it's going to be on the market. You know when they move out. You know how the trash piles up out front. You kind of know the process. So when you're in the city and you're familiar with your surroundings, you know it almost completely. So I think that I try and use examples like that so the public can understand just what we were up against. This enemy was ingrained in the city. They didn't wear a uniform in a city of over 300,000 people, and they used the people as extra sets of eyes to collect information and gather on those routines. And it was simple for them, and they used their fellow citizens as information collectors and with them with intimidation and murder to get that type of information. So it was
the definition
effective.
of terrorism.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
And the one thing they always had on their side was time. They weren't going anywhere. They knew we were going somewhere. I mean, that was shit. All they had to do is tune into Fox News, and they divulge our entire campaign plan. So
you pretty quickly, and you take your first KIA, which was I believe Libby, correct?
Yeah, Corporal Dustin Libby.
So what? Joey and I kind of talked about this while we were waiting for you to come on. Was, you know, as an enlisted man, I always hoped that if something were to happen to me, that my CO would take the time to make that phone call that you made. Where in reality, I'm not sure if he would have. You know, I haven't had a chance to talk or really know our company commander for our first deployment. But what you know, what with all the shit that's going on in your AO, what made you say I need to make that phone call now? You know, I personally, I wouldn't be able to fault you for, you know, being like, hey, we got some shit going down, you know, this can wait. What really drove you to making that phone call then?
I think that the timing kind of presented itself for one, but I mean, it obviously weighed heavy on everybody in the company when we lost Libby. And I just didn't think there would be a good time to do it either way. It's interesting because I got a letter in the mail from Jenny Libby just yesterday. And I like when I pull the mail out of the box, I can recognize her handwriting. And I just thought making that phone call, I put myself in their shoes. I mean, I'm a dad. I wouldn't want weeks or months to go by. I just wanted to give them a little bit of peace because I could only imagine, because I'd gone through it before. I mean, this was the first Marine I'd lost an Echo company, but I've lost friends and fellow Marines before, and I just know how much anxiety that causes. And, you know, to be able to talk to Dustin's mom and dad and his brother that night was, you know, it wasn't for me. I mean, I'm sure maybe subconsciously it helped me too. And that's the relationship we have now too, is we understand that family that loses, the Marines are part of that family. I mean, she's stuck with me. She's stuck with all the Marines too, despite Dustin being gone. But his spirit really lives on because of our connection. And it means a world to me, especially when, you know, we still communicate, and his brother is, you know, we're like brothers. It's really an amazing connection. So it was a tough thing to do. It was a tough thing to share in the book, but I thought too, it is the first chapter, and it really is one of the most important stories. And I've trust me, I've had plenty of battle-hardened Marines calling me names like, you know, thanks for making me cry on a plane ride to a total stranger, man. He's like, that was tough. I'm like, yeah, suck it up, man. Like, you know, there's more. It's an emotional chapter about a commander having to make the a phone call to the first Marine that he lost in his command, and to his mom. It's tough stuff, man. But you know, that's what people need to understand is it's a human business. It's a people business, and that's really what the story is about. It's not about the fighting. It's not about the friction and the explosions and all that sexy stuff Hollywood portrays. This story is about people. It's about leadership and overcoming adversity and team building and resiliency. That's what Echo and Ramadi is about. All of that other stuff just is a backdrop to this story that I was so fortunate to be able to tell about these amazing people. And it's not even a fraction of the people. It's just those who are emblematic of so many great people. That's what I tried to get through in the story. And when military people like yourselves thank me for writing it, that's great. But it's the people who never served when they reach out to me, and I've gotten thousands and thousands of letters and emails and DMs, who now understand what our young men and women who serve go through and deal with afterwards, and the trauma that they experience at such a young age. I think I got a letter here. I'll share another story with you. I got a letter. It's an email from a nurse in West Virginia, and she was telling me her daughter's dating a Marine. I was like, oh, great. This is going to go great. I'm scrolling through thinking she's about to lay into me. And she says, so I wanted to learn more about the military. I want to learn more about the Marine Corps. So I bought your book. And when I read it, she was kind of blown away and she was inspired. And something in me said, I got to email this nurse back. So I emailed her and I said, thank you for your kind words, but also thank you for what you do as a nurse in the emergency room, because you understand trauma, you understand loss, you understand pain. I said, but the great part is, in receiving your email, you also understand the power of healing and sharing those stories of overcoming all of that trauma. And that connection with the lady that's on the other side of the country just was, you know, that's just one recent example of the type of feedback that really makes barfing your soul and hardest experiences into a book and hanging it out there in Barnes and Noble bookshelves and whatever, and Amazon. It makes it worthwhile for me. Doing shows like this really make it worthwhile for me. So it's pretty cool.
Well,
pretty fortunate.
You talked about, you know, in inspiration and stuff. I want to talk about I think it was a sergeant, the one that he got shot in the chest, and they guys Kazovac him, you get him out, and then he shows back up at your guys' base. It's like I'm reading this and I'm like, no, he's not. No. Oh my God, he did it. How did? What was it like when you find out that this guy basically goes UA from the hospital and shows back up?
I didn't know any of that, Andy, until I interviewed Espo. Like, I didn't know that. I didn't even know he was gone. I mean, I knew he was shot. I knew he got medevaced out, but once he was medevaced, again, you just kind of have this blind faith in the system that he's going to be taken care of. It wasn't until 10 years later that Espo shared that story with me, and I just saw Espo and his family. He got promoted to first sergeant, and I went to Camp Pendleton for the promotion. And I love that story because when I was doing interviews with the Marines and family members, I called Espo, and he's not a real chatty Cathy. I mean, he's business. He was the epitome of what sergeants are, kind of stoic and Roger that, sir. And so when I told him I was writing the book and I wanted to share some stories of him, and I finally shut up and let him talk, he went on for about 2 hours straight. And I just sat there at my computer doing this, just taking it all in. And his wife reminded me of that phone call when I saw him last month when he got promoted. And she was kind of in awe that he was even able to talk. But that story's so cool because it's there's things that happen in movies and TV and you're like, that never happens in real life. And then there's things that happen in real life. You're like, you think that only happens in the movies. But Espinosa getting shot in the chest by a sniper, being treated, dying, flatlining in flight, recovering, and then sneaking his way back, Shanghaiing rides on random helicopters from base to base, and then popping back up just so he could be with his Marines. And the whole time his family is expecting him home. That is, yeah, inspiring. Man, there's 1,000 other words you could use to describe that whole story.
But I think his family's, and he never shows up to, so his family, I mean, geez, Louise. That's yeah.
I think you was it the nurse that told him like he was the first person that they had that was alive after being shot in the chest like that, and then that's a free ticket home, that's a free ticket to basically the rest of your life. But he's like, it's a testament to the love that we have for our brothers of, hey, they're going through this shit, I'm gonna go through this shit with them. And to not want to leave your guys, and to be shot in the fucking chest, and to find your own way back it's awe-inspiring. It's like, this is the love of the Marines. This is,
and I've never even asked Espo about it, but because I've never been shot, thank God. Plenty of close calls, but when you get shot, I'm not sure, like, why would you want to go back and get shot at more or get shot more? I don't know. Do you think like, well, I've already been shot, the chances are lower? I don't know. I mean, what goes through the mind of a 22, 23-year-old sergeant who again did have the golden ticket. I think it was his second Purple Heart. He'd been shot before, but it was the bond. It was the connection to being a leader. And again, he's still leading to this day. I'm so immensely proud of him. I can't wait to go to his next and final promotion to Sergeant Major, which is probably a couple of years down the road. But pretty inspiring guy.
Could you imagine being like a Lance Corporal standing 6 and centered in front of him, and then being like, oh, first sergeant doesn't know what we go through, and then he's like, I got shot in the fucking chest.
I died. I died.
And then, you don't want to field day your room? I got shot in the chest and then found my way back to the combat and finished the pump. Like, it's like,
you can't say.
Yes, first sergeant. So
I don't want to be that Lance.
So you guys switched AOs a few times. You guys, was that because of your guys's being from the MU? Where you guys they moved you around where they thought they needed you?
I think the best term is scab labor that most people would relate to. Is we really were farmed out to meet the needs of the area. At the time, when they ordered the surge strategy, the additional 20, 30,000 troops that we flooded the battle space with was to really hammer down on every pocket of resistance simultaneously, because it had become a giant game of whack-a-mole where insurgents would come up and fight. We'd hammer them down a little bit, and then they'd seep out, find another area to pop up. And so that's what was happening until they flooded the battle space. And being part of the MU, they covered down on all of those areas, which was a lot of those commanders the freedom to operate and maneuver differently. And we wielded a lot of firepower even at the company level, but we rolled in there as a battalion landing team with 2,500 Marines, soldiers, and sailors, and the MU had the aviation assets, so it really created this exponential combat capability. And when they were done with us in 1AO, when I guess, to simplify things, when we killed enough of the guys and settled it down, they said, hey, there's some bad fighting over here, move. So we got chopped to different task forces as a company, and it was good, but it also had us in a mindset where we had to adapt differently to each changing AO, how we patrolled, when we patrolled, how we engaged the people. All of those components were, again, so dynamic and so fluid. It really kept us on our toes. But again, the guys at every level, from the team leaders to the individual Marine and up, really made it happen.
So was there any difficulty in getting, I think you talked about when you guys moved out of Ramadi over to, was it Ripa? Is that how you?
Ripa, yeah.
Yeah.
Ripa.
And the ROEs and stuff, was there any issues with that? Moving from basically, a literal, you guys are in, multiple times a day, you guys are getting into the shit, to a more, I think you guys, it was
a different kind of hearts and minds.
Different sort of
not
mission.
two in the heart, one in the mind, but actual hearts and minds.
Well, the analogy I use is, I could take a young Marine and give him a little training and a machine gun and some ammo and a little practice to get him to go from 0 to 60 and engage and kill that target pretty effectively. But to go from 60 to 0, that's the real leadership challenge. So yeah, we were operating in the red constantly in Ramadi, in Western Ramadi, for weeks and months. And then we shifted to Western Al Anbar province, and there was still a fight, but it was a different fight. And we had to bring the needle down and get these guys to understand that, hey, we need to engage more with the local people to be more effective, because our mission had changed. And to be quite honest, there just weren't as many bad guys to kill. So you have to realize that is the area wasn't as saturated with people who were willing to take up arms against us. The real fight then was trying to develop some sort of semblance of normalcy for the people. And to do that, it meant the guys had to take on a wide array of different skill sets and jobs, from being an infantryman to a policeman to an insurance adjuster, and handing out claims cards and school supplies to kids. And shit, we cleaned up garbage, and the Marines blame me for that to this day. And I'll take that one. But that was part of our mission, and it none of it was glamorous, but it was all part of the job. And that's the diversity of the U.S. military and Marines. They just get stuff done, and that was cool about it. And again, we had a pretty high level of effectiveness in certain levels. I mean, again, we weren't in a position to make that place, a shining city in Iraq. It just wasn't. It's still a truck stop between the Syrian border and that country.
Yep.
I think you described yourself as a walking ATM, right? Because basically, you guys shot a donkey or something, and you were like, "Shit! Now I got to pay this dude for his donkey." Like,
yeah, it was goat, but
Yeah.
any errant rounds, or there's always overspill from a firefight, and eventually the citizens would creep out of their homes and they'd come, like, excuse me, your bullets killed one of my goats. It was so you'd have to give claims and reparation to certain people, and it was part of the job. We're always walking around with a wad full of cash, and and again, that may seem crude to some people in America, but without the understanding of the Arabic culture that we were operating in, that was part of it. And again, we were talking about culture earlier, and the young Marines really understood that culture, I think, and that I don't think it made us better fighters than our Vietnam era warriors. It was such a different war. I love talking with those guys and comparing notes, but culture is a huge part of that. And a fellow magnificent bastard and former commander, former Secretary of Defense, James Mattis, is one of those guys who really understands culture. And in his book, Chaos with Bing West, if you haven't read it, please, if you're listening, grab Chaos by Jim Mattis. He understands culture at the strategic and global level. And I think he's one of the most brilliant minds and one of the most humble warriors that we've had. And he's reached this iconic status, amongst Marines. But, to me, I just view him as somebody who's super well educated, somebody who's very well spoken with a great brain, because I never served under him. I was never in Mattis's command at any point during my career, but we have a connection through 2-4 as a magnificent bastard. That's where he was a second lieutenant. So yeah, it's hard to believe James Mattis was a second lieutenant at one point. So he wrote about that culture. So I highly recommend that book. When we're talking about culture.
I got that one written down.
I
love his pieces that he writes. I always read his little.
I named my middle child after Mattis, and he was born, like, literally his name is Mattis James, and he was born 6 weeks early. And when this was when Mattis was SecDef, and I wrote him a letter, and he no shit wrote me a letter back and sent me a signed picture that hangs in my son's room. And unfortunately, my son lives up to the call sign Chaos, because that kid is freaking. If any of my kids is gonna be a Marine, it's gonna be that one.
Yeah.
But I think it's that's in the Marine Corps. We learn a lot about our history, and we keep our history alive. Whether it's the Crucible, where you learn about all the Medal of Honor recipients and stuff, to we literally have to take a test on our customs and courtesies. We literally have to map out the island hopping campaign, and we love our history. So knowing that Mattis is part of the the Magnificent Bastards, that's a lucky thing.
Story. It's such a great story, Andy. It's such a testament to the type of guy he is. And one of my dear friends and Gold Star moms, Diane Layfield, she called me recently. She says, we're catching up. She says, hey, guess who called me last week? I said, who? Jim Mattis. I said, what do you want? She said, he just wanted to say hello. So that's the type of guy he is. And there's others too. I mean, I have a letter sitting here on my shelf here from Joe Dunford, who was Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff. Just a thank you note for sending him a signed copy of Echo and Ramadi. And I think I've given my book to a lot of whatever you want to call them, celebrities or prominent figures, but some have said thank you, some have sent me notes, some have not. And in comparison, I think, I look at this letter, and there's a guy that's probably pretty busy as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and yet he took time to send me a letter. So we're lucky to be part of not only the Marine Corps, this great tribe of warriors, but being part of those who have served. And I sit here today, man, with you guys sharing these stories, and the thought of young men and women who are protecting our country. I don't lose any sleep at night, trust me, because you can bash on millennials all you want or this young generation, but there's plenty of them out there that are doing it. They're in the ERs stitching us up if we crash our car. They're showing up on the scene to put out the fires. These are millennials. These are young people, and there's a whole segment of warriors and protectors that are still out there, and to be connected to them and for you guys to share their stories on this show, man, just keep doing it. Just keep doing it.
Well, these are the people. My thing is like, okay, so we just see this garbage on the media. I'm sorry to call it garbage, but it's just it's focused on negativity that's very depressing for us, just regular people. So we gotta, our whole mission is to get people on here that that make the world go around. And so you're definitely one of those people that help make the world go round. I hope, I don't know, so we're coming up. I know you're a busy man. What do you have any? What are you doing now? You're Okay, are you still promoting the book mostly? Are you working on anything new? Is there something you could give us there?
Yeah, I tell you, the book we've had so much success with it because of people like you helping share the story. It's done very well, and it's inspired me to talk about it and write more about it. I just finished writing a documentary loosely tied to the story that we're gonna get funded pretty soon through a dear friend of mine up in LA. He's going to be executive producer. I'm also executive director of Brave.org. We help veterans who are dealing with post-traumatic stress and our Gold Star families through outreach programs. I'm writing 2 other books. I continue to write op-eds for USA Today, Fox News, Town Hall. I'm the president of the 2-4 Association as well. So
wow.
I like to stay pretty busy. I just got asked to be an audible narrator for, where's my copy? I'd hold it up here if I had it sitting here. It's a book called Warrior by Shauna Springer, and it was endorsed by Sebastian Younger, who wrote Tribe. I'm really excited to help other veteran authors, as I don't like to say it publicly, but as an agent, to get their books sold. I've sold a couple books for other authors, and just keep telling great stories. They don't even have to be military stories. I think the background stories are great. But I love it when people feel that passion and want to talk about it. And I think that being able to share my story and others along the way is important. And that book is great. It's what I did, and it's not, but it's not about what I did. And Josue Barone, who is over at my house, he's a 3-5 Marine with Save the Brave. He reminded me of that. He lost his leg and his eye, and he's got 3 beautiful now and a gorgeous wife. It's not about what we did. It's about what we're doing today and what we're going to do in the future. It was a small part of that, great, but that's not who I am now. When I go speak across the country, sometimes people ask me like, "Oh, you wear a uniform?" I'm like, "No, I did that almost 25 years. This is what I look like now. This is what you're gonna get." So, anyone out there, if you've got a story to tell or you feel that, just do it, man. Just write it. It takes work, but you have to do the work, and you have to be willing to give of yourself and share. And help people, man. The nonprofits, guys, there's 45,000 of them out there for veterans, which seems like a lot, but when you are helping other people, you're really helping yourself. And I tell you, that's probably the one thing that sustains me the most, is when the tide comes in, everybody's boat rises, and doing what you do, helping lift other people up, helping share their stories, that's part of that. So again, I want to say thanks for having me on the show. If people want to find out more about me, just follow me on Instagram at Echo and Ramadi, or on Facebook at Echo and Ramadi. If you want to find out more about Save the Brave, go to SaveTheBrave.org on Instagram, or SaveTheBrave_offshore. That's all the deep sea fishing we do. It's so cool. Or if you want to make a donation, go to savethebrave.org, click donate, click recurring donation one time, and you're going to be making a difference. I just want to say thanks again, man. You guys are.
Yeah, if we're figuring out technology. I apologize. The internet. It sounded like you stopped talking for a second, but we're gonna figure out technology. Actually, I think we can probably add some of these links to our video.
Yeah,
we're gonna add some of these links. That's awesome. Save the Brave.
Real quick though, I want to point out that you did most of that deployment with like basically a broken freaking neck, right? Like after you fell off that ladder.
Injured, not broken. Close.
Well, yeah, but, I mean. Just thinking about carrying all that weight and being under all the physical stress with a messed up neck is ridiculous. I mean, it's no getting shot in the chest and coming back, but it's close.
Well,
yeah. Again, perspective's everything. Could have had it worse.
Yeah, that's true.
And I hope to see you guys in like General Mattis. Other than just being the Secretary of Defense, I honest to God wish that you guys could get like higher up. How would the country go if we got an actual warrior as a president? And everybody he says, oh, everything would turn into glass. I don't think so. I think it would. I think I would like to see that in our future. Some generals become president. I don't know if you're into politics, Mr. Huesing, but that I'd love to see you there. You'd have my vote.
I don't care if you served or didn't serve. It's all about leadership, and I think that's what the country's starved for right now is just real, authentic, transparent leadership, and not really part of the political playbook. Those tenets, I think, are vastly absent, but very important in my opinion.
Excellent. And so we do like to. We got a series of questions.
Yeah,
that
real quick.
Before we go,
if you have a couple minutes, we have a couple of our questions.
Prior.
Okay, so what is your favorite MRE?
Favorite MRE? Anything with jalapeno cheese spread. What was your favorite non-weapon piece of gear? Poncho liner, hands down.
Fantastic answer. It's for me. It goes between poncho liner and MRE spoon. But what was your favorite weapon system?
Favorite weapon system, personal, probably the M4.
Okay. What was your least favorite piece of gear? Like basically a piece of gear that you could have went your whole career without ever being issued, and it wouldn't have changed anything.
Well, I'd like to say my helmet, but it was pretty important. But
that's a good one. That's a good
one. I hated wearing it.
But yeah, those things could take anything. They're like the Batman armor. They could take anything but a direct shot.
It's horrible. Like, we got to find a better system, man. That thing is just.
Yeah.
What was your favorite rank?
My favorite rank? Well, I get to pick. I'm a Mustang, so I get to pick both. I'd say corporal and captain.
Okay. That
Fair
makes
enough.
sense. What was your favorite duty station?
Favorite duty station? Definitely Camp Pendleton.
What else? Oh, your favorite flavor of crayon?
Crayon.
Does not apply. That's a millennial joke.
Oh, okay.
I never ate a single freaking crayon, and I get called a crayon eater.
I ate half mine in the.
Someone just texted me and said, like, hey, someday you got to explain the crayon thing. I said, it's not worth it. It's some millennial joke that I don't know where it even came from. You'd have to Google it.
Yeah. I don't know. It showed up one day, and it was like, I never saw anybody eat crayons. Some of the smartest people I ever knew were in the Marine Corps infantry. And, you want to talk about problem solving, read Echo and Ramadi, and you'll freaking get a lesson on problem solving.
I like it when people say, hey, so did you write it yourself? Like, yeah, I don't have some Rhodes Scholar hiding here in my studio, like some English lit major, like, dictating to. But yeah, I wrote the whole book myself. So there's hope for everyone out there.
Yeah, well, again, I want to thank you. It was an honor and a privilege to be able to speak to you and to get the story of your guys out there at Echo 24. It's a great book. I highly recommend it to anybody that's into military history or wants to kind of get a feeling for what the Marine on the ground goes through and what they think and what they experience. And Joe, you got anything else?
That's it, brother. I'm clear over here.
I'm clear. Thank you, Scott. And you have a open invitation anytime you want to come on. Talk about anything you want. You've earned it.
And anything you need from Libo Team 5, we are at your disposal, sir.
Roger that.
So thank you and be safe, and hope to talk to you again soon.
All right, guys. Semper Fi.
All right,
Semper
Semper Fi.
Fi.